Hello, everyone, and welcome on back to some Minecraft Musings. It's my vacation week, day one of the official. Well, I guess it's still the weekend, so technically this would be a normal day off anyway. But I'm so excited. Uh, and actually, I have my kids for most of it, so it's still going to be about similar posting for videos. But just wanted to give a quick update. In fact, my kiddos are on their way right now. But So the conversation is still going on between Advocate Canada, or Mr. Canada Advocate, and myself. I'm actually just a silent observer in a lot of their conversation back and forth. They're bragging about being blocked by certain people and having these ideas, and that's all fine and good. I get that to a point, like when discussing politics with people that are a little more are a little less considerate of feelings and stuff when they're talking politics, and they're quicker to emotion. And that's the sad, unfortunate state of US politics, since we have it as a contest, basically. You're campaigning, you're trying to trick things, like and no matter how good a politician wants to be, you still find them saying things that are maybe not quite right, or maybe they're like exaggerating a little bit or stretching the truth to make it seem worse than it is. Like the recession, for example, that was horrible, right? Every recession in my lifetime, I haven't seen. I mean, I'm paying a lot for stuff, but like I only see little bits on the back end as a user, as an end user, as far as like these things happen, where all these tech and systems and politics upstream are changing these things, and I don't get it. Like I don't. It's not like the depression. Thank goodness. I'm very grateful. It's not like the depression or the Dust Bowl or any of that. Like, we're finally figuring out, like, no matter what. But like, I hear these people getting really anxious and excited about these things, and almost like having heart attacks. And it is bad for your health to stress so much. The number one killer, the number one cause of death in the United States is heart disease or heart problems. That's directly related to, oh my gosh, stress, overeating, our diets. I mean, we eat a lot of beef, which, I've cut back on a lot of beef. I used to love eating steaks and burgers and such, but now it's mostly chicken and fish, and I do still have the occasional burger, I'm not gonna lie, but and I was watching this health thing, and once upon a time that this doctor was talking about marbling and how that's like desired when you get beef, like steaks and stuff. If you see like um, white lines of fat. And the more marbling you have, the fancier the steak is, or what have you. And fat is bad. You don't want a lot of it. Like the body needs a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, because our bodies don't really know what to do with all the excess, and then it just packs it into our own fat. So, and then clogs arteries, and that white stuff ends up in our bloodstream and all that. And like, I don't know, not directly, I don't think, but pieces of it, like cholesterol and stuff that we get from it. And then we have all these fancy gadgets and inventions, which we do have better stuff. Like I saw something about a magnetic wire that could be used to clear blood clots in the brain, which would have been great about 3 or 4 years ago, because I had one of my closest friends, his dad actually passed away from a stroke, and that, okay, so that's a very clear and present danger. Much more dangerous to me than the stock market crashing. Like, I just, not that I think that it ever would. And plus, we got bailouts too. The banks got bailouts. Where's the student loan bailouts? Where's the? That's what I want to know. Is because like, where's the student loan bailout that's like, that would say, you know what, the Pell Grant. And this is one of the reasons I like Biden. Like I'm arguing against Biden with these two people about Russian propaganda and how the U.S. is actually the aggressor and we need to chill, and Ukraine is just another pawn that we're using to piss off Russia and possibly start a war. And these people still don't see it. They still refuse to watch the Putin interview. And it's like, really? Come on now. Like, if it was, anything else, it'd be fine. But just the fact that Tucker Carlson did it, and you don't like Tucker, it's just sad. And even my mom, I think she watched it. I think she felt about the same as I did about it. But her initial reaction, because she got it from one of her friends, was like, no, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Like, I don't want to watch Tucker Carlson. He's an idiot. And yes, he is most of the time, because he gets ratings out of controversial stuff and like raising these things. He jumped on the bandwagon, the conservative bandwagon, and he started spreading things like menthols are more dangerous than marijuana. Now that, mm, and cannabis too. Like anybody who still calls it marijuana, like is doing so either intentionally or unintentionally muddying up the waters around that because marijuana, first off, is a Spanish name. So anybody who's racist against Spanish people, which a lot of the Republican Party are because of the immigration crisis, it's just a byproduct of that because they're afraid of, hundreds of thousands of illegals coming in. And they're all Spanish speaking brown people and gangbangers and cartel members. And even if you don't outright say that, if you generally vote Republican, there's a good chance that you've seen a lot of propaganda that would lead you to believe such things or to mistrust Spanish-speaking people. Never mind that Mexico has been our neighbor for the entirety of our country being formed, and even before that, Spain was Europeans' neighbors. So Spanish isn't like a new thing. It's just the neighbor that some people are afraid of because they think that they're coming here to take our jobs, take our welfare, which we get mad at people for being on welfare, black people, like the whole George Floyd thing. Like I constantly hear the argument that, oh, Floyd was on welfare and he was a drug dealer and all this, and like, no, Floyd was poor, potentially poor. A lot of black people were still rippling effect from when they introduced crack cocaine into the projects in New York. They injected a very highly addictive drug into the. I mean, but people don't want to talk about that. Mm. Or how if you're wealthy, you just do the coke, you don't do the crack. Like, I mean, and even that, like I'm saying, don't do drugs, but I'm just saying on average, a poorer person or someone who doesn't have the same family wealth like as wealthy people do is much more likely to be like, man, life stinks. I'm going to go try this substance. Like, whereas rich people are like, oh, let's just fly to Disney World, or hey, let's go fly to another country, or, hey, let's take a vacation. Whereas poor people generally have staycations and, you get to hang out and play video, which is still awesome. That's all I'm doing. And actually, I travel for work more than I've ever done for vacations. So it worked out for me. And poor people are getting better and better. Like, we are fixing. Also, that chunk hasn't loaded in. I love it when you can see, like, yeah, that's cool. And it's so weird the distribution of that. Look, like some of the desert populated, but not that. And as I go over there, it'll load. Like there's dynamic tools in place in the coding of this game that, and just about every game too. Like if you look at, I mean, once you get a look under the hood with games and how code works, like, or at least once you learn how coding works, it's so interesting to see how games do it or what they do. Like every now and then they'll just have like we call them garbage collectors when you're doing Java programming. It's a tool that every now and then runs a process that's like, hey, are any of these not being used? Let's go ahead and take them out of memory. Like, or are they going to be used? And it does a scan of like the way things are going. And same with games. Every now and then it does a scan. Like, is anything glitching? Is anything failing? Does anything need to be refreshed? And then it just refreshes it from what it's. So it's like a mini partial reset. So I don't know. Anyways, back to the thing because I only got like well, depends. We did just get a bunch of snow up here in northern Colorado, so it might take a little time. I try not to pressure my co-parent because we're on pretty good terms. I mean, we have a pretty good understanding. We're not like best friends, but we're not enemies either. We don't like get angry at each other or get. At least I don't. I don't know. But anyways, enough about that. Let's talk about China. So, since we've already, or well, first let's address the Western propaganda that Advocate pushed is that LGBTQ are being arrested and executed in Russia. Okay, so yeah, I got a pufferfish. I looked it up. The last execution from the Russian government was recorded on 1996, from what I was seeing. Now I could be wrong. I didn't look very hard, but usually I don't have to with Google. Usually I've figured out how to phrase a question to where I get a result, or at least within the first page or two. And I just glanced through the first page or two, didn't see anything that looked like, oh yeah, here's an execution that Russia did, and they would be all over that. Don't you think? Like if LGBTQ is being harassed and oppressed, what I did find was the equivalent of the "Don't Say Gay" bill, where they don't want minors being introduced to LGBTQ, and that I mean, it's not great, but at the same time, I understand where it's coming from. Like, Russia's a very Christian, Catholic, like, religious country, and they're very conservative like that. And there's this stuff coming out, and, they're more plugged into the or to the Republican side of things because guess what? Trump didn't want to put all this stuff in Ukraine, and he was kind of pushing back on Ukraine. And for all the things that I hate Trump for, that is one of the good things that he did is he wasn't trying to escalate war with Russia. Probably because he also has business dealings over there. He has a hotel, and so he has vested interest. It goes back to that: if a mosquito lands on a guy's junk, is he going to swat it? No, he's going to very carefully get rid of that mosquito some other way. Same with like Trump has hotels in Russia. He has a vested interest, which was a silver lining of why it was good to have a businessman in the office because wait, that's going to affect me. That's going to affect people I know. That's going to affect our economy. Like we can't be doing that. And so he avoided war for more selfish reasons, but the end result is the same. We didn't escalate things with Russia. Now we are. And now we're like constantly and I feel like all of that is Biden's in the pockets of defense contractors. We need to have X amount of military even if it's just not the people. If we're just building the weapons and the equipment and sending it places, that's good for our economy. And I hate that that's still a thing. Like we are profiting off of death. Mm. So in a way, it's a bit of a stretch, but we are no better than Nicolas Cage in The Lord of War. Like we are helping other places in the world kill each other and encouraging it too. And that's why that Putin interview was so important because if Boris Johnson really did tell Ukraine to walk away from negotiations and continue fighting to the bitter end, and all of Ukraine is Ukraine, sorry to cough right in the thing, but then that's a concern and that's a conflict of interest and possibly war crimes. Because if Ukraine wanted to negotiate, if they were willing to give up certain areas of Ukraine, like Crimea, Donbass, and that third place, which I know that's probably a huge blow. That's like us getting rid of Texas, Florida, or I don't know. Actually, the economy of Texas is bigger than I think Russia, so not quite comparable. But still, I don't know. Maybe getting rid of Arkansas, Alabama, and like three regions of our country, or Alaska. Like Russia started. I've heard grumblings that Russia wants Alaska back. Like that would be pretty, embarrassing. Like ooh. So, anyways, my point is, it's either that or death. So if we didn't get rid of Arkansas and Alabama, we would be losing hundreds of thousands or even tens of thousands. We lost 3,000 people on 9/11, and we invaded the Middle East for 20 years. Like that's how mad we were over 3,000 people. Now imagine if it was like 100,000 people. I mean, because we didn't really bat an eye when we killed 400,000 people in the Middle East, civilians too. I keep saying that because it's very important that that's understood. That it wasn't Taliban, it wasn't. I mean, there's different figures for them, but actual civilians, the people that wanted nothing to do with it, they were just, they made the mistake of being born in that area part of the world, and then they got killed for their beliefs and that. Like, who's really doing the oppression? And I try to look at a lot of this stuff as an outsider. Like, how is the rest of the world viewing what we're doing? Like, would they agree with what these two people, especially Advocate and Mr. Canada? And remember, Mr. Canada started the whole thing like "f off," all caps. Like he was mad at me for posting something about Putin, and he unfollowed me pretty quick. He was like, "How can I be following someone that posts Russian propaganda?" And in that discussion, Advocate spread Western propaganda, lies about Putin and LGBTQ. So, and then she's like, "Well, the oligarchs and everything." I was like, "Okay, what about our own oligarchs? What about Nancy Pelosi and her stock market trading? How come almost all of our politicians are worth over $1 million when their salary is and their salaries are ridiculous too? I want to say it's like $100,000, and for what? To sit and argue with each other and pretend like they're doing stuff? Like, it just goes back and forth, and then they repeal laws, they get angry, they shout at each other, and then they're like, but does anything really ever get done? It's just ridiculous. But they won the lottery, they get all this money, and then they have to like divide the country even further, and it's really the magnification of certain issues and the ignoring of other issues or downplaying to where it's manipulating people's behaviors and emotions to be like, oh well, nope, I better vote Dem or I better vote Republican or vote blue through and through, and I don't know. So we need to weed out the stuff that's going on. I mean, or at least clarify if it is going on or not, because that's another thing. Is like the Republicans. Whenever I watch Fox News or I watch like a speech from Trump or which I haven't watched many, because I get so sick of it. Because it's just like the whole time I'm thinking, they constantly say that the government is spending too much. Anyways, no, this This isn't about the U.S. This is about China. Sorry, this little video I wanted to do. So I follow that government official or that representative from China in Ireland, and because China does have, whoops, a lot of censorship. Like they don't allow things like YouTube. They don't allow a lot of news. Like they are sheltering their citizens from a lot of things. Probably because they see all the death and destruction from propaganda and fake news. And as much as I hate that term, some of it is fake and not like completely fabricated, but blown out of proportion to misdirect and confuse people. And that should be illegal. I mean, like freedom of speech is protected until it causes harm, or that's why we legally require fine print on just about everything, because no deal is too good, is every deal is too good to be true, because it's not true. You have to read the fine print and you have to understand, oh wait, no, you only get this on this day. You have to stand on one leg when you order it, or whatever ridiculous thing. Like I remember when I worked at Subway, we would have discount sandwiches whenever the Avalanche would win. Well, not a lot of people watched Avalanche games, but like, and then we would do that, and they were only the cheapest subs, the meatball or the cold cut, which were the most ghetto. Like, I mean, the meatballs sat in a cooker all day, and then the cold cuts were just like pre-processed bologna, basically, and like, so I don't know, it was just funny, but but true. And when you have that insider look of things, I worked at Subway for 5 years, and I was just like, I would never eat a cold cut. I don't. I mean, it just doesn't sound appealing to me. Anyways, let's see. I think I heard something. I think I need to get ready to go. But, anyways, I posted a thing from a Chinese government official or diplomat or whatever that was talking about why we're so concerned about the Uyghurs. I thought it was the Uyghurs, but like it's Uyghurs is how they pronounce it, which I was cracking up last night because it sounds like. Anyways, but it's a very serious thing. Like the U.S. is trying to cut off the Belt and Road Initiative that China is trying to unite with Europe, and that's not something I've ever heard because Western media doesn't talk about that as much, or it gets drowned out by all the supposed bad stuff Putin's doing, to where it's like, wait a minute, what is the U.S. doing? What are we doing? Like, are we trying to destabilize a region, which we do all the time? And they also brought up the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war. And they said that we were sponsoring terrorism all along the Middle East, which we were. We were arming rebel groups and terrorist groups, and they had U.S. weapons, again, because we just keep giving them out like candy. And they were killing each other to destabilize a region. And who knows why? Like they could have been promised things. I mean, more weapons. Like, or oh, we believe in your cause. Same with like the Iran Contra thing, the whole start of the war on drugs or the explosion of the war on drugs, which, because of that movie American Made, we now know that it was Reagan trying to clean up a mess that he created or his administration created. So he's still responsible for it because it happened under his watch, his leadership. And then bada bing, you've got like anti-Central and South America initiatives. You've got a bunch of animosity, all because they saw a way to make some quick money with CIA pilots trying to spy. In fact, I will do a little bit of spoilers on that movie. It's a great movie, go watch it, but it talks about how the CIA wanted to spy on communist activity in Central and South America, and so they wanted good pilots to fly down there and take pictures. Well, they didn't pay the pilots that much, which, surprise, surprise, the government usually doesn't do, but they wanted him to do that sketchy stuff, and then the cartels found out, and they're like, hey. And they weren't even like really formed cartels. It was just like they were just starting out. Like, how do we get this? And then they exploded because guess what? The CIA has planes that fly down there all the time and have to be undetected because they're not technically legal. So we were breaking laws just so we could keep an eye, and like we thought we were justified. And then, so then those pilots found out that they could make a lot more money, still take the pictures, still do the runs, but let's bring back a few drugs, a few pounds or kilos of drugs when we do that. And that's how the drug war started. Or, well, Nixon started the drug war just because he wanted to destabilize hippies and black communities. We have evidence of that. We have conversations from some of his people saying that those demographics would be weaker, and they were speaking out against wars and the war machine and everything. And hippies have been demonized forever. Look at reefer madness. Like marijuana, or cannabis, as I should say. See, now I'm even calling it that. course, I'm not racist against Spanish people. I speak Spanish. I had a great time down in Costa Rica, and I was able to experience other cultures when I was a kid. So, you know, my school was great for doing that. My redneck, like, hick school up in the mountains, I still went to Costa Rica to study other cultures. So, and live with a host family for a few days. Granted, I was drunk most of the time, but those poor host family people. Anyways, where was I at with that? So, and we just went with it. I mean, and drugs are not good, but it is so much more dangerous. And that's what I keep telling these people. It's like, I know people that have died from the war on drugs, personally. I know people that have died in police custody. There's all these stories about how, and if they would have just been taken to a hospital or allowed or taken to a rehab facility instead, but no, they get thrown in jail to where they sit and await trial or until they bond out, and we could care less about them. We're just like, little druggie, go sit in a cell. And that's how we treat people. It's ridiculous. And so, I don't know. So, anyways, I brought up the Chinese thing, and we'll see what they have to say about that. But so far, they've had a lot of great points about, like, pro-U.S. talking points, but not a whole lot of substance when other countries are concerned. In fact, until she proves that she was like, until she proves that Putin's actually executing gay people, she spread Western propaganda against Russia and blatantly. And then the other guy, Mr. Canada, was like, yep, like, or didn't say anything otherwise, just let it happen. And that's how these things happen. That's how propaganda happens on our side. So, anyways, food for thought. Because really, nobody wants war. And nobody even wants the Ukraine war. Ukrainians don't want to be fighting a war. They want their independence, just like America wanted their independence, our independence. And Taiwan wants their independence. And then I looked up China. Does China have elections? And guess what they do? They still have a leader that I don't think is elected, but I would have to look more into that. But England has a king. England had a queen this whole time. So that's what I'm saying is like why? But they had a parliament. They had a House of Commons. They have like a government. They have people that are elected for positions to argue and debate things and figure out laws and serve the people, just like America. And then we have a president who isn't quite a king or queen. But then look at all the nonsense that goes into picking a president. It's who can lie the most, who can get away with, and who can bend the truth enough or spin it to make it look so bad for having the other person that people will vote for this person. And the same, like even with Biden, I can point out like he touts his job creation so well, and I'm constantly seeing fact checking because I'm in community notes, and thankfully those do get published after a while once they get upvoted enough. Is it'll show that yes, he created a lot of jobs, but guess what? COVID took away a lot of jobs as well, a huge amount of jobs. So all Biden did was be the president that happened to be at the time when COVID was finally like dying off, and the vaccines started working. The vaccines that the Trump administration did, and Operation Warp Speed and all that, like and then people get mad at Trump for his addition to the deficit, like his increase in the debt. But then I see people say, well, COVID costs this. This is how much it costs to get those vaccines out so quickly. And so see right there, if you don't actually think through some of these statements, you can't be like, well, wait a minute, Trump added a bunch of debt because he was trying to do this. And I think I just saw the other day, his tax cuts added like 200 billion to the debt. But then we're trying to send, I think it was 75 billion the first time and now 75 billion again. So we're spending 175 billion on the Ukraine war. So what's the difference? Like, and I say that because that's one of my argument points. Is like he gives tax cuts to the wealthy. I don't like that. And he also gave a check for $1,200 to all Americans. That was cool. I mean, I've never seen that before. But then at the same time, if he didn't give those tax breaks, would we have had such a burden on our taxes? Like, like, is it really gifting us money, or is he giving us some money here, but then charging us more on the back end here? And that's how a lot of people, myself included, don't really understand the economics of that. And I even took some economics classes. I have a business administration minor for my degree. Like, I understand a very brief summary of like accounting, finance, marketing, and management. I did a class in each of those, and yeah, so and my capstone was in international business. And basically, I learned about how NAFTA screwed over Mexico and Central America, and now we're moving a lot of our production down to Mexico. So Mexico's going to start booming, and then a lot of people are probably going to want to just stay in Mexico instead of immigrate to the U.S. because the U.S. isn't all that great. I mean, it is great, but like what people are confused about is like other countries are perfectly capable of doing a lot of these things themselves, and without a lot of the dangerous stuff that we have, like the war on drugs or systematic racism and stuff and police brutality. Not that the police want to do it; they're just doing their jobs, but they're told to enforce these laws that make no sense and force them to the point of accidentally killing somebody or like having them die in police custody or like with Elijah McClain. Anyways, I gotta get going. I hear them. So ta ta. I'll see you in the next one.